Welcome, welcome, welcome. Oh, there. Welcome back to the stream, intrepid viewer. I figured I would just chill out and wait and see if anybody showed up, and here you are. You've showed up. So I hope you're able to participate in the chat, and hopefully more folks will show up. Definitely learned a lesson about streaming today, which is I do have to be more diligent about getting that streaming go live message out earlier, give y'all time to get here. Uh, it takes time to. I know when I get the messages, it takes time to get here. So I wanted to share. I'm kind of excited about because it is St. Patrick's Day in the U.S. and the U.K. St. Patrick's Day happens to also be my grandfather's birthday, but not the grandfather that we've been researching on stream. So I am trying to decide whether, in honor of my other grandfather's birthday being today, if it would make sense to stand up a second tree. Hey, Mystic Coyote, welcome, welcome. If it would make sense to stand up a second tree and do a little bit of demonstrate doing research on the grandfather whose birthday today is. That's kind of cool. He is, by the way, not at all Irish. He is German and Polish. Um, uh-oh, it's not posting links. Ah, okay. Oh, a bot. Ooh, we have a bot viewer. That's exciting. Let me see. I'm okay with that. Okay. Cool. Oh, neat. Yeah, I'll take that. I'm gonna let those happen. Sorry, I'm watching the stream feed here, which is all new to me, and it looks like bots showing up and posting spam is a thing. I think that may be what's going on, and I'm getting notifications of that. So if it's not what's going on, then they'll be cooled down and you can explain, and maybe I can change my settings. So that'll be great. So cool. Um, anyway, so shall we work on my grandfather whose birthday it is today? The anniversary of whose birth he passed away before I was born, or shall we continue to work on the Hammond tree? I think we're going to go ahead and say happy birthday, Grandpa, and then work on the tree that we have built already because we've kind of got a thing going here. And if I jump around too much, I think it's going to be kind of harder to follow what research we are doing. So I'm going to assume, but Mr. Coyote, you're here, and that means that you are the only vote. So you get 100% of the votes as to what we do today. If there's something in particular that you want to see, you have earned the right to ask for it by showing up. Thank you for showing up. So yeah, let me know in the chat if there's something particular that you want to see. And if Nightbot is mean to you, let me know. I will fix it. Um, Anyway, cool to have you here. So I'll go ahead and get started, but feel free to derail me and say you want to look at something else. Last time we streamed on Sunday, we spent some time up in looking at Honeywell Hammond and Eugene Hammond and our theme. Cool. Our theme for midweek has been manuscripts. Last Wednesday, we looked at a free book online about the Shumway family, and this is something I was meaning to revisit. So I think this is what direction I'm thinking to go today. Is I made a haha hilarious joke about how there's a Shumway book, but there isn't a Hammond book, and I should write one. And then after the stream ended, I remembered that I'm an idiot. Not only is there a Hammond book, there are two Hammond books. Uh, and fun fact, both of them are wrong about important things about the Hammond family. So I'm wondering about, I wonder if we will find them just by Googling. And then if we can find the Hammond books, let's see if those give us any insight into. You may recall on Sunday that we saw that there was record evidence of at least three people named Honeywell Hammond, one of whom is my ancestor, the other two of whom are we don't know how they're related, are not my ancestor, but could they be his ancestor? Maybe. So let's see if we can find a genealogy of the Hammond family and see if the Honeywell given name is used in that book and if it gives us any more information about where that name might have come from, because it seems to us today unusual. So let's go genealogy. Our friend Google is going to help us with this search. That is actually a tool I have not listed as a free resource, but it's a good one. And here's what we learn. A Hammond Museum? I didn't know there was a Hammond Museum. I wonder if that's Hammond, Indiana. Anyway, I don't know. Let's go look. So we have, if we do genealogy Hammond, what we learn in the very first hit is there is something called History and Genealogies of the Hammond Families. And our first link goes to Ancestry. So as we've kind of talked before about, the Ancestry does pull in copies of digitized, out of print, out of copyright books. They do pull those in and index them and make them available on Ancestry. And those are typically behind their paywall. But if a book like that exists on Ancestry, we can often assume that a copy of it, because it means it's probably out of copyright, we can oftentimes go look for it in another source and find a free version. So we have from just this capsule here, and I scrolled down a little bit to see, is there one from archive.org, which is where I would want to look? No, but there is one from books.google.com. Let's go see if we can learn anything about this book. Okay, so here we are, A History and Genealogy of the Descendants of William Hammond of London, England, and his wife Elizabeth Penn, through their son Benjamin of Sandwich, and it was written in 1894. and here on Google, this is a key thing. This button right here is the button we care about. It's free. It's free. So we can read this whole book on Google Books. We didn't do that last time. We read it on archive.org. Let's take a look at the differences. Sorry, we read the Shumway book on archive.org. In order to continue, I sign in. Do I? No? Okay, let's not do that then. I don't want to sign in. Free ebook. I suppose I have to be signed in with my Google account. I don't know what that's going to do on the stream. So let's just go to archive.org and we'll go look for History and Genealogy of the Descendants of William Hammond. Let's go make another tab and we'll go to archive. We did this last time, you will recall. We go to archive.org. We select this, which is the Internet Archive. We select books. Does it go there? I don't know. Does it go there? If I click it again? No. If I click down here. Yeah, heck. Let's just put it in here and see what we get. So we just pasted History and Genealogy of the Descendants of William Hammond. We hit go. And boom, here it is. Wait a minute. Is it? Well, now this one, this one was, oh yeah, okay. This is by Roland Hammond. Well, that's interesting because, remember I told you there were two books, right? This one is by a dude named Frederick Hammond, and this one is by a dude named Roland Hammond, and they're not the same. They're not the same. History and Genealogy of, this is a different title. History and Genealogy of the Hammond Families in America. Well, we know what to do with that. Back to archive.org and search it again. So let's search the other title. Does it have both of them? It sure does. I never really know. Usually when there's multiple copies, it means that they were digitized by two different digital providers, right? It might be a different copy of it. Sometimes it'll be a volume 1, volume 2 thing. So you may have to dig a little bit to see. If I hover over it, it comes from the same source. I don't know. This is a different book. This one is the one by Frederick Hammond. So let's click in and find both of them. Here we are. And there were two copies of each. Sometimes, because they were digitized by different providers, one may be more readable than the other. So if you find that you're having difficulty reading the text, or if there are pages missing, or if there's writing on it, oftentimes it was a library digitized their physical copy. So if their copy was damaged, if there's another digital copy, it may have come from another source, and you may be able to find a way to solve those problems. Okay, so this one is by Roland Hammond, copyright 1894. The other one is by Frederick Stam Hammond, Copyright, that's a 19-something, 1902. Fantastic. So we have a couple of books about the Hammonds. Now, I'll be honest, I still to this day don't totally know how common the name Hammond is. It's not super rare. And that tells me that there could be more than one branch of the Hammonds existing in the US. So the fact that there's a book written about the Hammonds, when we go do my grandmother's history, we're going to find that her maiden name was Smith, right? If I go find a book about the Smiths, that doesn't help me at all. So it is, based on what we've done just now, it is too early for me to assume that this is a book about my Hammond family. We don't know that yet. And the way we're going to know, remember, on Sunday I made a thing about what the genealogist Robert Charles Anderson says, is that you are trying to prove that for one given record is describing the same person as another given record, or that the two records are connected to each other. So we are trying to say we've got a record of the existence of this Honeywell Hammond. We link him to me by records that connect him to his son and his son to his son and so forth and on to me. We want to find out, does this book have anything to say about a Honeywell Hammond that we can reasonably say is my Honeywell Hammond? And the first way to start with that is going to be, does it say anything about a Honeywell Hammond at all? I just noticed that this says volume 1, part 2. It sure does, which means I want to go back to the main menu and see if the other one is part 1. And now we know, yep, sure enough, volume 1 part. That's why we have 2 copies in it from the same library. It's 2 volumes. So I actually want to go back and open them in separate windows because I want both of them to be up. Open a new tab, open a new tab. I do a lot of opening things in tabs. So here's volume 1 here, volume 1, part 1. And the way I saw that part 2 annotation, and I turned the page and I saw that it seems to be starting in the middle of everything. I would have expected it to have a flowery preamble about the glorious history of the name Hammond back to Neanderthal times, because they all do that, and it didn't. So I said, that feels like I'm joining in the middle. Oh yes, look. It thinks we're going to go back to the year 1000. I bet we're not. Okay. Okay, so now I'm on volume 1, part 1. Let me turn the page. Some more prefacey things. Yeah, that's more like it. That looks more like, some poetry. Oh, it's so flowery. And this is the 1902, a book written in 1902. I actually am going to jump back to, here's the other one. Remember, we have the other one from the year 1600. That's a little bit more humble. To the year 1894. Since this one was written first, let's see what we get out of this one. So we're going to see, this is also got some preamble-y things. I don't see any notes about this being in 2 volumes. It looks like this is just a single volume. So what I want to do now is, we're starting in the first book. We're starting in the 1894 book. Let's see if it has anything to say about the name Honeywell. And we will do that like we did last week by doing a text search inside the book. Now, if the digitization, if the indexing process, if the optical character recognition on this book misread some of the typing, it is possible that Honeywell might be in here and not be caught by a search. So if it doesn't come back, that doesn't mean they're not in there. It may mean that they misread all of the, we saw how handwriting is really bad. Hopefully the typing, it will figure it out. So let's see if Honeywell is in there. No results. So we have no Honeywells in that book. Let's see if there are any Honeywells in this book. This is the 1902 book. Honeywell. Well, no Honeywells in either book, huh? Okay. Do you suppose there's a Eugene? Well, now that's odd. That one I've not seen before. I don't know what that means. Search just doesn't like me. Okay. Eugene. Okay. because Eugene was living. He was born in 1855. We saw him mentioned in the Shumway book, which was written in 1909. So it's not out of the question that he could have been named in this book. It doesn't look like he is in either one of these books. Let's try an experiment, because now that I'm not getting those search results back, I want to see if it's my data or if the search is not working. And the way I could do that is by searching something I know is going to be in there, like the name William, because it's right there in the title. If I don't get results on William, search is not working. Okay, that's okay. What might we do about that? Is there an index? There's an index. So I used the bar at the bottom is how you scroll through the pages. And I just clicked on the bar all the way over at the end and said, take me to the very end of the book. And now I'm going to scroll through the pages until I find until I find stuff in the index. What I'm seeing here is this is going to be, it's called the index of other names. So this is going to be the names of families who married into or were related to the Hammonds, but it's not the Hammonds themselves. I could look and see if there's a Shumway in this book. Right? Is there a Shumway? No, there's not a Shumway. Okay. So that's an indication that if Honeywell were in here, if my Honeywell were in here, I would expect them to also name that he married Emily Shumway, because we knew from the Shumway book that he did that. And so that means that at a minimum, the author of this book might not have known that, but it also may be that this is not my family's book. All right, so we've got index of other names. I think maybe, yeah. So here's index to Hammonds. So this is all of the people surnamed Hammond, index of Hammonds, in the book. Let me make this single page and make it a little bigger, because that's just very small print. Here it is. We'll do a little scrolling here once this loads, hopefully. Here we go. And that allows us to go to the H's. Holy cow! Do you see what I see? There is at least one Honeywell. Those two pages are next to each other, so those might be the same person. There is somebody named Honeywell in this book on page 251, and it didn't come up in the search because the search wasn't working. So we didn't give up. We persevered. Before I go racing off to page 251, I am curious to see if there's a Eugene. I suppose I should look for a Harry. It's my grandfather. There's Harrys in this book. My grandfather had been born when this book was written. We gonna find out. And let's go see if there's a Eugene. There's a Eugene. There's two Eugenes. There's three Eugenes in this book, Hammonds. They're not near Honeywell, but that doesn't tell us anything yet. We don't know. There's some really interesting names in this book. Okay, this is our 1894 book of the descendants of William Hammond, and no matter what else may happen, if I scroll down here, whether those are my Eugene or my Harry, the fact that there is a Honeywell in this book at all means, as we knew, 3 Honeywell Hammonds existed. That is starting to give me a pretty strong indication that even if I can't figure out exactly how they're related, it seems like just about has to be the case that my Honeywell has something to do with this family, unless that is an even more common name than I think it is. Right? To me, Honeywell Hammond seems like a really unusual name. But sometimes we get, I have encountered in other family lines, I've encountered where you have somebody with what is to me an unusual name, but it turns out that they were named after a historical or media figure at that time. My example is DeWitt Clinton Smith is an ancestor of mine on my grandmother's side. And I still to this day cannot remember who DeWitt Clinton was. But the number of families who named their sons after him is astounding. And it's not even limited to one geography. It is like there are a lot of people named DeWitt Clinton something. The guy they're named after, his surname was Clinton, but his family's giving the kid that as a middle name because they admired that individual so much. And I am a bad historian and I don't remember who that person was or what they did. Tell me in the chat if you know. Not going to run off and Google it right now, though I am tempted. Point being, if Honeywell was a historical figure, it is possible that other unrelated Hammonds might have used the Honeywell name for reasons that I don't yet know. But it seems more likely that it's a family name, and therefore that my guy Honeywell may have something to do with this family. Let us race off to page 251 and see what we can learn about this. See how I'm dragging along the bottom, and then over to the right of that bar over here, it's changing the page number. So I'm watching the page number and I'm getting kind of as close as I can to 251. And then we'll see if their 251 and the book's 251 are the same. They are not. Sometimes the pages are off. Oh, quite a bit off. Quite a bit off. Because of things like this where there's a photo or a page that's blank on purpose. Let me zoom out and you can see that that's a page that's blank on purpose. Let me do 2 pages. And because those don't get numbered in the printed book, but they are numbered in the digital copy because digital doesn't know and doesn't care, because the numbering systems are different, sometimes you will get that this number, it thinks we're on page 251. The printed book thinks we're on page 197. So we need to scroll a bit more and just zero in on it and find that page. But what we want is the printed book's page 251. Just knowing the difference can help you navigate a little bit. Once we get there, we'll zoom in a little tighter so we can read better. Boop. So what we're looking for is they got a dude in here named Honeywell Hammond. We want to see who that is and what's up with them, and if there's anything we can see in this book that connects that Honeywell to my Honeywell. We don't know yet if that's going to happen, but we just want to see what we can find out. So, okay, we're on 248, 249. 251 is the page that we are looking for. Whoa, there it is. Okay. All right, let's see what we got. I'm going to switch it back to the single page view and zoom in. Just get it, and then we'll try to scroll to the spot where Honeywell is. So Honeywell is down here. There he is. 4 sons. Honeywell 251. Okay, so Honeywell is a son in a family. And if I scroll up, whose family is that? Holy cow. What is that name? What do I do with that? Okay. Okay, fine. So that's a name. That's a guy. It's a dude. Antipas? If you have any idea how to pronounce that, you throw that in the chat for me. I got no clue. Okay. Still don't know. Okay, so we got a dude named Antipas Hammond. And he doesn't say when he was born, but it says he got married in 1736. So let's make a wild guess that he was born around 1710. Here's my problem. So if he had a son, okay, here we are. We will, you may recall from the family tree, or you probably don't, because why would you? But my Honeywell Hammond was born about 1807 in Vermont. And this Honeywell Hammond definitely was not born in 1807. He died in 1807. So these two are not the same guy. So this is not my guy. But it could very well be the same Honeywell as, remember, is the S silent in Antipa? Maybe. Now I want to make Antifa jokes. Inappropriate, but I totally do. Remember that we found records for 2 other Honeywells because one of them was close in age to mine but lived somewhere else, and the other one was too old to be mine. So the one who was too old to be mine, I wonder if this is that guy. Why don't we go back and see in the tree what those records were? I don't remember if we encountered them as hints or search. So let's go see what Ancestry is throwing us, because I remember us saying there must be three. I did this a bunch. I remember us talking about there being more than one Honeywell. Ah, yes. So here's one of them, right? This is one of the ones. It's Honeywell Hammond in Rochester, Massachusetts. Go here, because we didn't have anything that linked mine to Rochester. And if we go here, Honeywell Hammond, Honeywell and Mary, married in 1778, which is too soon to be mine, so this guy is older. If we flip back here, wait, where are we at? Here. This guy was born in 1740. So for him to be married in 1778, he'd be 38. That's a little old for a first marriage, but it's certainly a reasonable age for a second. So this could be that guy. Is that guy in Rochester? I wonder if that's how they pronounce it in Massachusetts. I know some Massachusetts pronunciations, but not all of them. Or if it's Rochester. Okay. Oh, Rochester. Huh. There it is. He was given the homestead in Rochester. Seems they're probably at least connected, right? Oh, hey, look. He married in 1778. That's that guy. That's the guy. That's the same guy. Okay, that's that guy. He married Mary Andrews. And they did not, and it says no issue. Sometimes a book will say, oftentimes they're going to be good about saying no further record, which means we don't know, versus no issue is we know he didn't have any children. We know he didn't leave any heirs, didn't have any children. So they think they know, and they think the answer is did not have any. Okay. It doesn't say no further record, because sometimes the book just doesn't know, didn't find out, couldn't get any research on that family. But look, so here is Honeywell. This guy is too old to be my Honeywell, and he did not leave any descendants that we know of, and he did not marry Emily. He married Mary, and he did not live, and he did not apparently live in Vermont. It appears that he probably lived his whole life in Rochester, Massachusetts. So different guy. Again, I think that seems likely. Wait a minute. Oh, look, there were two Honeywells listed in the index, and here he is. Huh. Oh, for heaven's sakes, here's another. Okay, so this is then going to be a nephew, right? So here's a dude named Honeywell. Here is another Honeywell who is a nephew, right? This is Honeywell's sister, Elizabeth, who had a son, Honeywell, child Honeywell, but son probably. Okay, Honeywell. Oh, wait, but not Honeywell Hammond. That would be her married name, which is Haskell. So that's a Honeywell Haskell. That's entertaining. My family really likes these H's. They're really into them. And this Honeywell Haskell, first of all, is not Honeywell Hammond, so we're done with that. But also married in 1802, so was a good bit older than, was married, at least, let's say 20 years older than my Honeywell, who was born in 1807. And all of these families we're still looking at Massachusetts, where they are based. So I'm not seeing anything about them in Vermont. So there it is. Okay. Well, that unfortunately is a bit of a dead end. The index said there was a Honeywell on 252. So we're going to scroll a little bit and see if there maybe is another one. Boom. There's another Honeywell Hammond. Child of Joseph. Oh, this is hard to follow because there's not great dates in this one, right? Okay. So here we were on Antipas or Antipa. Let me scroll back up. Yes. So this is third son of Benjamin the second. So generation, you can barely read that, but that little number there means that that's a generation marker. That's how many generations down from whoever their main person is, in this case, William, from the title. So Antipas is generation 4. If we scroll down here, Benjamin is generation 5. Is that Antipas? Oh, it is. It is. It's Antipas's son here. So this is Antipas's children. Sixth son is Benjamin, 1756. That is this guy because of this number. They are doing the numbering system a little different from how we saw it in the Shumway book, right? The Shumway book gave a sequential unique number to every person, and this is doing them in sections. So if you don't know what section you're in, you might get lost. But I think we know that this is child number 6, Benjamin, and there's not a marker, is there? No, see? The other book had the nice little marker here that said there's a profile later on in the book for this person, and this doesn't say that. But 2, 4, 5, here's 6. Okay, so this is a child of Antipas. So like his sister, so this is a brother of Honeywell, right? Of that first Honeywell. So we've got Honeywell, whose sister Elizabeth Haskell named a son after her brother, and whose brother Benjamin Hammond also named a son. Where? No. Elihu, Abiah. Look at these glorious names. Leonard, Asenath, Joanna, and Joseph. So no. But if we scroll down, aha, Benjamin's son Joseph. So Joseph is a nephew of the original Honeywell, named a child after his uncle. And now we're starting to get into, this could be our generation, couldn't it? So we have Joseph, son of Benjamin, married Hannah Dean, had Honeywell, Lydia, and others, fine. Moved to Ohio. Married many times, had many children. Hoo boy. Honeywell died a few years since. A few years since? Okay. That is the right generation, I think, right? Because look at who else is in that generation. This is nothing further known. Could that be our guy? It doesn't say Vermont, but it doesn't not say Vermont. It doesn't say not Vermont. Afterwards moved to Ohio, which is not Vermont and is not Pennsylvania and is not Iowa. And those are the places we have associated with our Honeywell. So it means we have someone who is about that same age. Why don't we go back to Ancestry and see if we can find, right? And we felt like there was at least one other Honeywell who wasn't ours. So we think this one, hang on, we think this one is ours because it's in the right part of Iowa. I'll go ahead and add that just so that it's added and out of the way and we're not deciding on it anymore. We think this guy is right because it's in the right township in Iowa. I am actually going to add that June date there because that's neat. Okay, so we've added that. And then we think this is the right person. We think we saw a child named Homer that we haven't added to the tree, but it was in one of the books. We think that's him. We think that's him. So what else do we know about our guy? Right, we had him in 1850 in Crawford County, Pennsylvania. And on Sunday, we looked at a map that showed how that was sort of near, it's in the corner of Pennsylvania near Lake Erie-ish, which is near the Ohio border. So we can't, okay, like it's the part of Pennsylvania that's really close to Ohio, which means could have moved across the border at some point, might have been, could they have been living there when the book was written? No, because they were in Iowa already by then. The book was written in 1894. But it's awfully close. So, okay, I can't rule that out. Let's go searching for Honeywell Hammond and see if we can find any evidence of the other guy. I'm going to turn off photos in this search and family trees because I don't want them right now. I'm looking for something different. Okay. Rochester. Remember we saw in the book, there's a guy who died in Rochester in 1807, the elder one. That's the earliest Honeywell Hammond that we have found. That's this guy. This is associated with that part of Massachusetts. There's two of them. That's two different cemeteries. That's that same death record for Homer. That's the same Pennsylvania census. And I'm going to say I think that's likely our guy because it's the same county in Pennsylvania. We could cross-check that by checking the number of people in the household. Maybe we'll walk through that today. But then we've got, see, none of those was Honeywell. Then we've got an H. Hammond here. That's in that same part of Iowa that we like. Holy goodness. That's a Honeywell in Louisiana. In 1911. That's not our guy. Somebody else used that family name. That's wild. Okay. The Honeywell Hammond in Massachusetts left a will. That might be how they know he didn't have any children. Yes, it might. And so we could go. I'm going to leave that for a moment, come back to it. But wills are very interesting in that way. Let's remind me, if you want to see the will, let me know and we'll go back and look. At the moment, because we don't know that dude is even related to us, I'm not spending a ton of time, but could. Okay. The Hammond family. What is that? Oh, hello, Ancestry. Ancestry has this book. And look at this. I don't know if you can see that thumbnail as well as I can, but what I'm seeing in the thumbnail in the search is somebody surnamed Hammond marrying somebody named Elizabeth Honeywell. Did you now? And that's not the Hammond book that I have. Fascinating. I'm intentionally not clicking through on that because I don't want to go the other side of the Ancestry paywall. So I want to go see if that book exists in a free copy somewhere. Let's see if it does. This one, I am somewhat familiar with that book, but I genuinely don't remember. It may not be out of copyright. And if that's the case, I don't want to get everybody, I want to get me in trouble for showing it to you. Oh, hello! There's a free copy on archive.org. Let's go look for Honeywell in this book. So this is another interesting thing, a cool, interesting thing about genealogy family books is sometimes your family will show up as what's called an allied family, meaning you go back in the way it seems to be used is if you go back in history a ways, you will find oftentimes in the same town or the same general geographical area that there may be families that had a close relationship to each other, though they weren't initially blood related, and maybe they intermarried more than once, more than one generation of them married each other. And those, when they have those repeated connections, sometimes that family will then show up as an allied family in somebody else's book. And their history is not where you are descended from, but they may have information about your ancestors because your ancestors' family intermarried into their family. Let's see if the search is in any better a mood right now and has any better luck searching for the name Honeywell. It might not. If not, we'll go digging. Because what we saw was a thumbnail in Ancestry. And I would say, I think it's another 2 weeks before our trial membership at Ancestry runs out. Oh, look, we have search results, but let me finish this thought. I believe it to be the case, but we'll confirm this when the time comes. I think Ancestry does show you the thumbnails to tantalize you into buying their membership. And so I'm going to say that I think saying, I saw this in a thumbnail, here's the title of the book, let me go look up the book in a free source and see if I can find the thing that's in the thumbnail. I think that is going to be a legit technique that we can continue to use after our membership runs out. And check this out. Remember that what we saw was somebody named Benjamin Hammond marrying someone Elizabeth Honeywell. That's got to be this page right here. So let's click on that. And that looks exactly like the thumbnail that we saw. If I zoom into that, that looks like what we saw. That is super cool. And we're going to get a blurb. When is this book written? 1905. Sure, fine. Great. Fine. Okay, so we have, oh, and look. Remember that other book says William Hammond married Elizabeth Penn, and that book had already been written. Both of those books were already in print when this one was written. So they are all saying the same thing. Very cool. We still don't know if I'm connected to this family, but okay. It's interesting that those 3 books are all talking about the same Hammond family, right? This book, at least one of the other 2 books that we looked at, but I think both of the other 2 books that we looked at. So they are all, we've connected those records to each other. We have not connected them to me yet, but we have connected them to each other. So if I find different things in each of these books, I can still say those probably pull together into the same family. And then if I can find any connection to my family, then I know I'm good on all of them, if that makes sense. We've got Robert Charles Anderson calls it a bundle. Calls it a bundle. Okay, so we have here that an early, when is this? Because there's no years on that. Okay, well, so we've got the first generation is this William Hammond, and then there's a Benjamin, and then there's a Benjamin, and the other book said Benjamin the Second. Hang on, that's who we were looking at, isn't it? Okay, so here's the book we were in. Let me know in the chat if all this jumping around is too disorienting, and I can slow it down some more and make sure that you're able to follow along. Just let me know. Antipas was the 3rd son of Benjamin the 2nd, son of Benjamin, son of William. So if we compare that to this tree, Benjamin, son of Benjamin, son of William, that's this guy. So what we've just learned is that Antipas, if I'm reading this right, Antipas's mother's maiden name was Honeywell. And that means he named a son with his mother's maiden name. If I'm getting those generations right, I may have, hopefully I haven't compressed or skipped, but I think that's what this is saying. Shall we go back and see if, okay, let's go see if we can find this Antipas and his, let's go find out this book isn't telling us right here who his mother was. So that means we've got to go find, where's his family page? And remember, this book is laid out a little weird and different. It's laid out different from the Shumway book. So how do I find his page? Well, I go back to the Hammond Index is what I do. Hammond Index. Imagine, if you will, this is the virtual version of me thumbing frantically back and forth between these in a paper book. I don't have this book in paper. we want Antipas. And we're going to zoom in on him. Index. Antipas. There he is. He's only on page 250. Well, that can't be right. Surely he is listed with, okay, fine. Where's Benjamin then? Let's go find Benjamin. 80 bazillion Benjamins. Thanks. Okay. Well, wait. Oh, wait. Benjamin third, Benjamin fourth, Benjamin Jr.? So maybe 230? Okay. I'm not faking this. It's been so long since I've looked at this book that I genuinely don't know what I'm looking at. So we really are discovering / rediscovering this book together. We want page 230 is what we want. I'm good at exaggerating. I'm not faking. Okay. 206. Sometimes I do the math and figure out the differences in pages, and then I can just dial it straight in. But as I've discussed on the stream before, not that good at math. 230. Okay, so we want to go further than this. Our point is we're trying to find, is it true that Antipas's mother's maiden name was Honeywell? That's what we're trying to ascertain at this time. So we are looking to see, and then we're looking to see, is his father's family, he was son of Benjamin II, is that family described on page 230? We are on page 229. 230, Benjamin Jr. That is not the guy. Dang it! That's not the guy. Okay. Fine. It's not the guy. We need to go back to Index of Hammonds. Sorry, that's not the guy because it was too old. Too recent a record to be the father of somebody who was born in 1710. So, because that was the dates on that Benjamin were in the 1800s. Okay. Back. Here we are. So this has not helped me dial in on the correct Benjamin is my problem. So what I want is to find various Benjamins, and I might just have to start at the beginning. What I'm going to do to make this a little easier is I'm going to use a browser trick. Simple. I'm going to duplicate this tab so that I have the book open in 2 tabs. So now I have it here, and I also have it here. So I've got the index here now, and I can refer back to it without having to remember what page the index is on. Great, let's do that. When I'm working at a computer, both Mac and Windows computers have the ability for you to do a split screen. So you can pull one tab of your browser and make it be half of the page and the other half over here. I do that a lot when I'm combining things side by side. Why did it searched? Yeah, okay, fine. It searched for Will. Oh, now you're searching. Wait a minute. You've just decided your search is working. Have you now? I did not stage this, you all. I did not. Okay, let's go see if I can just search for Antipas. What I'm trying to find out is, was Antipas's mother's maiden name Honeywell? That's what we're trying to find out here. And the book should tell us. Because the other book, hey, there it is. Okay, that's Rochester. That's a different Rochester. Interesting. Third son. Yes, so this is, we saw this. We've read that before. That's the thing that was later, and there's him in the index. So we know he's on page 316, which is actually like page 250. That's the one we've read before. This says page 15. Let's go see if that is also him. It seems like maybe it would be. Oh my. Oh, it's the table of contents. Ah, that helps. Okay. Table of contents time. But it is going to help us because that's how this book is laid out. Okay. Navigating is fun. I do seem to be just live streaming to you how to read a book, don't I? But how are we doing? Is this helpful? Okay. Part 5. So he's in this section. Benjamin Hammond II, that's who we wanted to look for. Youngest son of Benjamin, presumably the first. So if we had stuck around in that area, we would have actually found him on page 243. Let's go see if that's true. 243. Oops, wait. 246, 240. There he is. He wasn't that far away from where we were in the first place. He is right here. He is. I think. Yes, he is. Oh my goodness, there was a place called Hammond Town. I wonder if that's. I wonder if that's me. Look it. He married. Okay. So this is, remember, we're following the generational markers. William is number 1, Benjamin is number 2, and then we have his son Benjamin the second, which is not a name, like Benjamin at the time did not use the second in his records, but here he is. And then looky there, he had the son Antipas. I was off, but not by too much. He was born in 1704. And that's the guy that we saw profiled earlier who married somebody and had a son, Honeywell. Okay, he had a son, Honeywell, and the reason he had a son, Honeywell, is that his mother's maiden name. Here it is. Benjamin married Elizabeth Honeywell. Here it is. Well, now that okay. Benjamin married, and then Antipas and various others, right? Antipas then had a son, Honeywell, who died without leaving any issue, and then Honeywell, and then other children of Antipas had children named Honeywell. I wonder if anybody else did. So now that search is working, let's just search for Honeywell. Right? We couldn't have just jumped into the table of contents because we didn't know to look at Antipas. We didn't have any reason to think that that guy was interesting to us. It was only after we found Honeywell in the index, and we've been working our way backwards, that we found that Antipas was interesting. And then the fact that he has his own section in the table of contents became interesting. Okay, the word Honeywell shows up here. Elizabeth's surname. Her father was a Captain Honeywell, sure, and they were from Rochester, Mass., which we had seen earlier. This one, that's the same page. That's the Honeywell, the elder one that we saw before. So is this. They're on the same page. Remember, Elizabeth Haskell had a son, Honeywell. Here he is. Joseph, who married Hannah, this is the Ohio guy. He's here. Honeywell was in Ohio. And here's Honeywell in the index. Honeywell Haskell in the index. And Elizabeth Honeywell. We didn't know to look for that as a surname, but it is in the index as a surname. And it looks like for this book, assuming that the search is correct, but at least it's working now. For this book, we found all of them. We read all of them. We've got the surname, we've got the son of Antipas, and then we've got two others in that generation. Two of whom are definitely not my guy, and one of whom is iffy for my guy. It doesn't seem like it's my guy, but we can't rule it out yet. But we can't rule it in either. Okay. But we do have 3 Honeywells in this book, so there it is. And now we know where that name probably comes from. And that makes me feel even more confident if that is really a family name, right? That is a surname of an ancestor that they are trying to honor. That tells me that a random Hammond family somewhere else in America with different ancestry would not have any reason to use that as a given name. They just wouldn't. So, because it is named after a famous person, a respected person, but it's a respected person that they are descended from. It's not a popular figure as far as I can tell. So that means I really am finding I want to connect my Honeywell to this family, but I don't think I have enough from this book to be able to do that, not based on what I have yet. We have one more book that we haven't dug in, well, one and a half, right? We have the book that we looked up at the beginning, the second Hammond book. We also have this Allied Families book that we have not dug all the way through. So we've looked in, let's say, here's the one we found on Ancestry, the Allied Families. Let's go see the mentions of, okay, this is, oh, Captain Richard Honeywell, fine, is the parent of Elizabeth Honeywell. Sure, okay. And I assume I'm pronouncing that close enough, but I obviously I don't know. Okay, so we've got that's this page, that's this page. 168 is married Elizabeth. Oh, we can actually, that's going to stay right there, so we can go look. There we go, 168. Oh, whole bunch of information about who the Honeywells were. Here's that same dude, Antipas. This is the book we were just looking was 1894. This is 1905. Do we know anything else about Antipas? Oh, it looks like maybe he doesn't have a profile in this book because that guy's got a number, but that one doesn't. Let's go find out. Josephus Hammond. Probably they're tracking this guy. Remember, this is an allied family, so they are going to track them until they connect into their own. Well, we're out of Hammonds, so for this book. There's just a couple pages on Hammonds because it's an allied family. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time here because it doesn't do me a lot of good to get emotionally attached to the history of this family until I know whether I'm actually related to them or not. We haven't finished connecting me yet. We have a pretty strong hunch that I'm connected to this family, but we don't know how. And for all we know, right, it really could be somebody else. It's probably not. That doesn't make any sense, but we don't know yet. Early in my genealogy career, I had a research project that I did based on a different family book from my grandmother's generation, where it talked about being descended, I swear, from the nearly prehistoric kings of Wales and somewhere. And I got really, really excited about it. And I made a huge mistake that I have learned from and practice my life now, which is I started chronologically. Building out a family tree. I went back as far as I could in that book, and I started with the earliest person and built my way down towards the present day. And I spent a lot of hours. It was a long time ago. I don't remember how many hours now, but a really long time, painstakingly entering the prehistoric kings of Wales who have just the one name, and it was a lot. And I worked my way all the way from, I want to say, like the year 800 up through, because the royals have some idea of genealogy, worked, got all the way up to the 1700s in the US. And I got to the page in that book where it said, and then this person is a child of this family. And I realized that the dates didn't work. Like, that child, it was wrong. It was either they were born too early or it was too many gaps. It was just, that child couldn't possibly be a child of that family. And so the problem was, then I had a break. I had everybody from the year 800 to about 1700 that you could document. And then we had the person you could actually connect to me. And at that break point, they couldn't possibly have been related to each other. And so I did a bunch of work to try to fix that. Like, maybe one generation is missing, or maybe they got a name right. There's nothing. I never found it. And it's probably because that was just an error. Like, it was just, there's the conclusion being, I can't prove that I am related all the way back to those people. And so I had to tear out so much work to remove all those unproven people from my tree. And I was also super disappointed to not be descended from the royal families of Wales, because how cool would that be? So now I have a rule that I start from myself and I work back from me backwards, and I only follow leads if I know what that connection is. Now I'm going to put notes, all kinds of notes that say this family looks really promising. I am not going to go enter them as some disconnected branch in my tree until I know how to link them in. And I'm going to try not to get emotionally attached to this family, because what I want to do is prove that I'm related to them. There are reasons to do other things. If you are fishing for, I wonder if I have DNA results to this family, is one reason to maybe do that differently. But I have talked on stream before about how I have certain areas of genealogy that I am conservative about, that I'm very cautious about what makes it into my tree. And it is only because I do a lot of this and I have wasted so much time putting in data that then had to be torn out. So I try to make sure before I put it in, how confident do I feel that it belongs here? Or if I'm doing it as an experiment or for some specific to test a theory, how am I going to mark that so that it's easy to get back out if my theory's wrong? So that's where we're at. We're just kind of glancing at all this stuff and going, this family sure seems like it ought to be connected. Let me figure out how am I going to figure out whether we're connected or not. Okay. So the section in the Allied Families book is a short chapter on the Hammond, and it only goes to whoever it is that connects into the family that the book is about. That is fine. We have some really good background information. If this turns out to be my family, this may be really cool to come back to. But it doesn't give me enough to know whether they're my family. So I'm going to set them aside, and we're going to look at the third book. It's actually we're going to look at this book, right? This is the Frederick Hammond book. So we looked at the one that was written by Roland Hammond in 1894. This is the one written by Frederick Hammond in 1902. So we have not gone through this one yet. And we're going to see whether search is wanting to work for this book, and see whether the name Honeywell shows up in this book. And this is the one that's in 2 volumes, and I have them on separate tabs. So we will look at both of them. Well, that tells us a thing we knew. We knew about Elizabeth, the daughter of Captain Honeywell. Why don't we go look at him? Them. Yes, this matches. Oh, interesting. Oh, I see a paragraph that I'm interested in. I'm going to zoom in on that paragraph. So it's 1894. Okay. Oh, okay. This is the paragraph that I noticed that caught my attention. This paragraph caught my attention. Let's look at it. There. Benjamin probably removed to Rochester, Mass. About 1684 in a genealogy of his family published some years ago by a gentleman since deceased. There are some errors in the very early records, and many families that have since been found could not be discovered prior to its publication. Many families that have since been found could not be discovered. This is saying maybe 2 different things, right? There are some errors, maybe. I'm interested in there are errors. This is talking about the book we just looked at. Because if we scroll down and see this footnote, scroll, for an account, Hammond genealogy by Roland Hammond, published 1894. He is, in fact, talking about the book we just read. Okay, it says 2 things that I think are interesting. There are some errors. That's a thing. In the very early records. Okay. And many families that have since been found. This is telling, and this is interesting if you do have the crazy good fortune to have a family book, more than one book written about a family, is, of course, in 1894, there may have been families that he didn't know about or missed or couldn't find information on. There was one of those families of one of those Honeywells. It said nothing for the one that went to Ohio. They said, we have nothing further on this family. It is possible that in the 8 years between when that book was written and when this book was written, or they asked different people. This author might have found the Honeywell who lived in Ohio. Maybe. We don't know, right? If they did, they're probably not in this volume because this one didn't turn up any records for anybody named Honeywell, but we're going to keep looking. So this one just gives us the person we'd seen before. This is that same Benjamin who married Elizabeth Honeywell. So we knew about that dude, and we have yet another numbering scheme. You just have to be sort of good at puzzling out what the numbering scheme is. It looks like we're going to be doing this unique numbering. Why is this so late in the book? He must be talking about a different... There must be other Hammonds in this book. Okay. Okay. So, I just think page 500 in the second volume of the book is awfully late to be getting to our Benjamin, who's like the second son, the second descendant of the... Anyway. He has profile number 5. See? So this number that's closest to his name here, the one on the right, is the order of the children in this family. But then this number out here to the left is going to be the unique profile number that they are in the book. And because we're so early in this family, the numbers are just really small and it's not obvious. When we get out into those 4-digit unique identifiers, it becomes more obvious that that's a profile number. But if you look here, first son Samuel is profile number 2, and there's profile number 2 right there. So let's page through and find profile number 5. Where's profile number? You're killing me, book. That's profile number 9. Why? Oh, the star is the indicator that, the star must be telling us this person has a full profile in this book, and the ones without the star don't. Drat. Let's verify that. So number 2 with a star has a profile. When we turned the page, sure enough, the next one we got to was number 9, having a fully written out profile, and number 9 has a star here. And so then you can also kind of tell, because here all we have is a birth date and a star. Everything else about this guy, Seth, is going to be down in his profile. But if you look at all of Seth's siblings, there are these chunks of, here's the evidence about this person. And also, by the way, that's all you're going to get. We're not going to write about them anymore. That would explain why we don't have any other hits on Honeywell in this book, because the author didn't trace down this family at all. Didn't trace Benjamin's family. And the only one of these siblings who would have a reason to name somebody Honeywell is the one whose descendants were descended from a Honeywell. The rest of them weren't descended from a Honeywell. Does that make sense? Let's go double check volume 1, because... Are we in volume? No, we're in volume 2. We are in volume 2. I'm going to check volume 1 just to see, because what if it's not chronological? What if they wrote one and then they learned more and they just added more stuff that they learned? So let's look just to be sure as to whether there's a Honeywell. There's still no Honeywells in here. Is there an index in this one? I bet there's not an index. See the unique profile numbers? Okay. And it just ends. So this is volume 1 just ends. It doesn't have its own index. Let's go to the end of volume 2 just to make sure. Let's see if there's an index. Let's see if it tells us anything. There is an index. That is of, this is other surnames. Right. Okay. What else can we learn? So this book looks like it is even less useful to us in figuring out how our Honeywell is connected. It is even less useful than the other ones were. The other one at least got us close to some children named Honeywell, which was very, very, as you saw, super tantalizing. Okay, wow, I keep needing to scroll even more. There's just not very many on a page. Where's the Hammond index? That is also not the Hammond index. Fine. More. There. Nope, that is also not an index of Hammonds. And I don't actually know that they're separate. They might have been in there in the H's and I missed them. Index names other than Hammond. Nope, two separate sections. Okay. Names. So this must be the section of Hammonds. We are looking for Honeywell. H. Henry. We got some Harrys. We have no Honeywells. Not in this book. Which tracks because they didn't, as far as I can tell, he did not trace Benjamin's family. So, sum up. We've looked at 3 books so far. The first book we looked at was the Roland Hammond genealogy written in 1894. That one was a fun one to start with because we had lots of Honeywell goodness in the 1894 book. Not enough to prove that that's connected to our family, but enough that we think this is a solid lead and we want to keep researching to see if we can connect these two groups. We had a possibility of this family that moved to Ohio that had a son, Honeywell, that might be the right age to be mine. And he had these children and then moved to Ohio. There's kind of an implication that he was in Massachusetts. Yeah, right? This family started out in Massachusetts, but it could be Vermont. We don't know. So we have that. So this was probably our best lead because it was the most indicative that it might be connected to me. And then we had 2 other books. This one was the Allied Families book that solved the mystery. Where on earth, why is Honeywell a thing? Why is that a name? And it connected these Honeywells to Antipas, who was the father of all the children named Antipas. And then we found the more recent Hammond family book, which just doesn't go as far on that line, and therefore did not say anything about, other than the existence of an Elizabeth Honeywell. It didn't say anything else about people whose given name was Honeywell, but it is about the same family, right? If you go back from Elizabeth Honeywell, if you go the second Benjamin and the first Benjamin, that's still talking about that same family. So they're all talking about the same Hammond family. They're all connected to each other. They may or may not be connected to me. Fine. So we have spent a bunch of time in some Hammond books. That's what we've done. All off of the strength of this one original Google search. So our first free resource that we used was we did a Google search on just the dumbest thing, which was the word genealogy and my last name. And we found a book that we were able to find a free copy of. And from that book, we found another book. And from that book, we found yet another book. Great, right? So that was pretty straightforward. It's just about a question of knowing how do you piece together what you're reading in those books then. And it is still worth saying that second Hammond book mentioned that the first Hammond book had errors in it. It's very common for those books at that time to have errors in them. So you also have to, and they're not, as we saw with the Shumway book, they aren't always great about telling you where they got their information from. So you can't always go back and verify that they got it right if you don't know where to go look for the original record. This is why in history they have various, like the idea of primary sources, secondary sources, tertiary sources, which I learned about in probably high school and thought was tiresome because I didn't like history in high school. I like it now. But um, the primary sources are the ones that were created at the time that person was alive, and ideally were created by, but at least about the person that you're talking about. And those can also have errors in them, but because they are closer to that person, think about on Sunday we looked at the grave markers for the two infant children of Eugene and Ella. And what I said at the time was those grave markers were probably put up by Eugene and Ella. They probably paid to have those done. And so if that grave marker says, child of E.A. and E. Hammond, which it does, and it says the child's birth date, that was probably put there by their parents. At the very least, it's in the town their parents live at the time their parents lived there, right? So even if a generous family member paid for the grave markers to go up, they went and asked Eugene and Ella, hey, when was your baby's birthday? And so that is close to, I don't think that qualifies as an actual historical primary source, but that grave marker, I have a story in my head that says it makes sense to me that Eugene and Ella were involved in the creation of that grave marker. And so as good as their memories were of when their children's birthdays were, at the very least, we have what they thought their children's birthdays were. The reason I say that is that you will sometimes encounter a grave marker that was put up by descendants decades later or 100 years later, or may have been paid for and put up by someone who was a more distant relative, and maybe they didn't know. You get a death certificate that was filled out by their neighbor because they didn't have any surviving next of kin to be the informant on the death certificate. So sometimes that information is incomplete or wrong because the person putting it, it's a primary source, but the person who informed it didn't know either. So even a primary source like that, I think those are technically primary sources. A source like that that's very, very close to the original person can still be wrong, but you have a much better chance of it being right. And so we have taken a journey around in books about the Hammond family, but we find ourselves back at this tree, and we now know that kind of if we want to be able to connect our Honeywell Hammond back to the Hammonds that are described in those three books, we have work to do starting from him and working backwards to say, how far back can we get for him? And can we find anything in his history that would give us any reason to believe that he's descended from any of that family? And if he is, which one? Because we saw three different siblings who all had, or three different lines under Antipas who all had the name Honeywell. We had the original son Honeywell, the sister Elizabeth's son, and then the brother's son's, the brother's grandson. So we had Honeywells in three different generations and across the lines, which means, and that dude had at least 6 children. Others of his children might also have used the word Honeywell that didn't make it into the book. So which one of those lines do we get up into? Whew, that's a lot. So we want to see, we're right back here at the tree doing what we were doing in week 1 of this series of streams, which is what can we piece together about the people that we know working our way backwards. Let's go see if we can learn anything else about Honeywell Hammond. We hadn't yet, we were going to say this record in Rochester we know is not him because it's the one that's too old to be him. So I'm going to ignore it, and that's going to get it off of our list. And now we have 2 hints that we think are probably both him because the 1840 census, I'm going to go ahead and close all those extra tabs. We know how to get back to them because I'm going to open some more tabs up and it's going to get messy. The 1840 census has him in Crawford County, Pennsylvania, which is the same county in Pennsylvania that he was in 1850. And I'll show us those. We're going to go here. Here's 1850 in the town of Sadsbury, township of Sadsbury. And remember, we were super excited that he was a boatman because both my family and another cousin off of another child of Honeywell or Eugene, another cousin, each independently had a family recollection that Honeywell had something to do with transportation on the Erie Canal. And so it was super cool to find that in 1850, he was in fact working as a boatman. So here he is. Here's his family. We had not plugged in all of these children. And we didn't have, Eugene is not in here because he hadn't been born yet. Eugene was born in 1855. But we do know that this is the same family because everybody else matches the family that Eugene is later in. Do we have 1860? We don't. So it will be good to go see if we can find 1860. That would be, but we have Eugene with Honeywell and Emily in 1870 and 1880. They're all connected. So we know that that family connects. We know that this is the same guy. So the person described in 1850 is the same one as in 1870 and in 1880. We know these ones go together. Even though this is Pennsylvania and these other two are Iowa. The hint that we have, however, is not for that gap in 1860. It is for the one before in 1840. So let's go see what we know. I'm going to right click and open in a new tab so that I can do a little comparing. At some point, I'll set up the stream so that I can do split screen and you all can also see and not be jumping back and forth quite as much. But I haven't yet. Bear with me. But I want to go look at the 1850 record, and we'll just do some switching on that guy. Because I want to see if we can figure out, does what we want to look at for, recall, we talked about this last week also, the 1840 to 1850 is the dividing line between 1850 is the first census where every member of the household was named by name. Every member of a household for free people in America. So not enslaved people, but free people were all listed by name in the census as individuals. Prior to that, so the 1840 census, that wasn't true. The only name that was listed was what they call the head of household, whoever that may be. That was usually the elder male, but sometimes it would be the son and the parents live in the household, and so the head of household is the younger one. And sometimes it would be a woman, typically if she was widowed and was listed as the head of household. But if she's living with a child, it may be that her son is listed as the head of household or her son-in-law. Anyway, head of household could be a variety of people. But the point being, in this case, it's Honeywell, who's our guy. He's living in a town called North Shenango, but also in Crawford County, Pennsylvania. We could go look that up in the map, and I may. And what I want to look at here is we've got the rest of the household is not named. They're just counted by age and sex. So what we have is we have a total of 4 free white persons in the household. This is Pennsylvania, so there aren't any slaves. At this time, there are historical periods in Pennsylvania that Pennsylvania did have slaves, but this is not one of those times. And so what we have is a household of 4 people. We have a male between the ages of 30 and 39. We have a female between the ages of 30 and 39. And then we have 2 children, a son and a daughter, both aged 5 through 9. So a lot of people, what they'll do with this, and I like this idea. I'm thinking maybe we'll go make one. If I want to make a Google spreadsheet, I'm going to have to go log in with a Google account. So we'll maybe do this on a future stream. You can, if you like me are bad at math in your head, you can make a spreadsheet that will then calculate what's the earliest birth year and what's the latest birth year for that person possible. And then see if your known dates for those people fall in between those age ranges. Because that's what's going to help us. But what we can do is that we can say, okay, if this is the same household, then I would expect to find at least 4 people, unless one of them has died since then, right? But I'm in 1840. What I want to do is look at 1850 and see if I can find people who match. So we know Honeywell matches, and we think it's our Honeywell because we think he's in the right area in Pennsylvania as the guy that we matched with. Let's go ahead and double check that. We believe it's likely then, right? There's only one male of legal age in this household, and it's gonna therefore be Honeywell. That means we know this guy is going to be Honeywell. Our Honeywell is age 30 to 39 in 1840. Does that match what we know about him? Well, what we know about him was that he was born in 1807, which would make him about 33. So, yes, it matches what we know about him. Now, does it also match what we know in the 1850 census? Which is probably where we got that 1807 in Vermont. He's aged, I would expect him to be aged 10 years older than that. So is he between the ages of 40 and 49 in the 1850 census? He sure is. He's right here. He's age 43. So that matches. I feel good about it. And remember that even though we only had the first initial H there, we were confident that this was our Honeywell because everybody else in the household matches, including not just his wife Emily Hammond, but her brother Leonard Shumway. And so that really cemented that this is the same family. And we saw Leonard in their household in 1870. So we know, we're really confident that this is the same family. Okay, so that's Honeywell. Next we have here a female age 30 to 39. So we would expect to find a woman in 1850 whose age is between 40 and 49. How we doing? 39. Close enough, right? Because give or take a year is always going to be close enough, in part because the time of year that the census was taken, were they born a month before, a couple weeks after, etc. So give or take a year is almost always close enough. So that looks fine, close enough. Then we would expect to find, you all are looking, right? You're faster than me, but we would expect to find a female child between the age of 15 and 19 and a male child between the age of 15 and 19. With anybody other than the head of household, if they're missing in 1850, that's not the end of the world. They may have passed away. Or in the case of, especially in the case of young women, a 19-year-old daughter might have married and moved out of the house. So if she turns out to be missing, if there is no daughter between 15 and 19, I'm not going to have a lot of heartburn about that because I'll say maybe she is somewhere else, either living her best life or maybe not. But either way, they may be gone for some other reason. We've already seen that with the sad story of Cora and Charlie who died in infancy. But let's look and see, because if there are children of that age, that would be a pretty good indication that we had the right family. And kaboom, what do you know? We have a son who is 16 and we have a daughter who is 15, which is, wait, between 15 and, between 15 and 19, right? So between 5 and 9, between 15 and 19. So that didn't mean she was 9. It meant she was somewhere between 5 and 9, 10 years ago. Yes, these fit. So she wasn't as old as 19. She was, in fact, 5 at the time. She is now 15. Got it. There we are. There it is. And I suppose it also tells us that probably in 1840, we didn't have Leonard living in the household with them. So Leonard, we don't know where Leonard was, but we didn't have we didn't have 2 males between 30 and 39, right? We only had 1. So we have reason to believe that the family in 1840 in the census was Honeywell, Emily, Morton, and Adelia. There they were, right? So it is less likely that these children would have not been in the earlier one and then come out of nowhere, but it's possible. So we have them. And then we have more members of the family. And is it okay that they weren't in 1840? Yes, it's okay because Homer hadn't been born yet. And Mary Jane hadn't been born yet. If they're under 10 and they weren't in the prior census, totally okay. Which means that everything about this record lines up, except for the fact that Leonard wasn't living with them. But that's plausible. It's not a given that he had to been. He's an adult. He could have been somewhere else. These children probably wouldn't have been somewhere else. So if any of them were weirdly missing, we might ask questions. But that family of the ones that are related, that lines up, I'm going to say perfectly, right? Everything about that lines up. What that tells me is I'm going to accept this hint. This feels legitimate to me. One of the interesting things that happens at this point is, okay, I'm going to be able to connect this record to Honeywell because he's the one who is named in the record. But Emily, we believe that female who was not named, who was between the ages of 30 and 39 in that census, is probably Emily. But we don't have a record to connect to her. And so it is an open question still. Ancestry doesn't even really have a good norm for this. Do we connect that same record, even though the name on the record is Honeywell? Do we go connect it to Emily to show that she was living in North Shenango, Pennsylvania in 1840, and we have her name? Because the 1850 census has her listed by name, and that line is connected to her as a source. So would we say this is a source for Emily, even though she's not named? I probably would. And there's some weirdness that happens if I link that record with Honeywell's name to Emily. It starts to get Ancestry's machine learning algorithms to do weird things that I don't like. So I tend to usually leave these and not connect them to the spouse and children who are not named, unless I really, really, really need this list of facts to tell me that where they were at that time. So we have one last hint, and that is for the child Homer. We now know that Honeywell and Emily did have a child named Homer. We saw him in the 1850 census. So we're going to go ahead and connect him. Now, this record thinks that Honeywell was born in New York because whoever filled out Homer's death certificate was asked where was his father born, where was his mother born, and it said New York and then Vermont. I could go ahead and attach New York as an alternate birthplace, just in case. They share a long border. It is possible. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then that way we'll go back and see what that looks like on the facts list. And then we're going to go ahead, and we hadn't previously added Homer as a child in this family. So we're going to go ahead and add him. And he was born in Pennsylvania. There were a whole bunch of other children, right? There's at least 3 more that we haven't added. And I'm kind of going to be lazy, and I'm going to add them if it's easy. And like this one. This one gave us the add for free. So we now have, and it didn't give us his gender, which we are going to just assert was male. Maybe if Ancestry lets us. Okay, we're going to give up on that. Sometimes this happens, and what you can do is give up and try again. Sometimes these pop-ups don't load. Bear it. Okay. Let's try it here. There he is. We're just going to note him as male, just for neat and tidiness. There. So we'll recall that Eugene has Morton, Adelia, and Mary Jane as siblings also that we've not added yet. And I will add siblings if they help us shed light on the parents. And I like to have, if I have some, I like to have all of them. But I've been a little back and forth for this stream about whether I'm going to do the work to go in and add all the siblings. I may not. As a reminder, I have already built this tree elsewhere. I have all this data somewhere else. So for my purposes, I don't need them in this tree. And I'm probably not going to do a bunch of work outside of the stream to add them. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, notice here we have the birth and we have the alternate birth of New York. That way, when I go click and say this source, it'll say this source says he was born in New York. It might be wrong, but at least now I know which source says what. I don't think that this source says Vermont when it doesn't. It says New York. And then these ones say Vermont, And the 1840 census doesn't say, because they didn't ask that question in that census. Okay, here we are. I am curious, because I don't remember now whether we actually had the 1860. Do I have an 1860 census for this guy? I want to go back and look. Do I have him in the 1860 census at all? So I'm going to use search to try to find him in the 1860 census. Okay, I'll show you a cool way to narrow down your searches, because I actually want to look very specifically, not just, not just across all records right at the moment. I'm trying to answer a very specific question. So I want to go in this filter list over here on the left-hand side, census and voter list. So what I'm telling it is, I want you to please only show, oh, hello. I want you to please only show me records that are a census. It could be a census for, sometimes you'll get UK censuses and Canada censuses. Censi. Well, here seems like a pretty good candidate, because we already know Beaver Township, Butler County, Iowa is where this family lived. Oh, look, here we have H. Hammond, Leonard Shumway, our buddy, Leonard's sister Emily. We have Morton, we have Homer, we have Eugene, and we have this Cynthia, who is not someone we have seen before. Fantastic. That all that checks out, right? Although in 1860, Eugene really shouldn't be 16 years old. He should not. He was born in 1855. He should be about 6. Let's click through to the image of the census. Are we going to get color coding on this one? No, not color coded. Some of the other census that you saw in the other streams, they'll actually color code the record that you're looking at. Okay. So look at all of this. These are kind of squeezed in here, aren't they? We have an H. Hammond. We know that's going to be our guy. Emily, a son Homer, a son Eugene, a son Morton. The 1860 census also doesn't tell us how the people in the household are related to each other. 1880 is the first year that they do that. So 1860, 50, 60, 70, we just have to guess. And that becomes relevant for this because of a thing that I just know from another tree, which is, who's this Cynthia person? We know that there was an Adelia who was, how old was she? 15 in 1850. So that's the wrong age for her to be Cynthia. Sometimes you will see, this drives me nuts. We saw it with Eugene, right? That in this time period, people, even young people, even children, would alternate going by their first name or their middle name. Super annoying, because they will sometimes show up with a completely different name from one census to another. Could that be happening could it be Adelia Cynthia Hammond? It could be, but she is really the wrong age to be Adelia, because Adelia was 15 in the prior census, so she should be about 25 in this census. What is a more likely explanation is that Adelia has moved on. She's gotten married and moved out of the house, or perhaps has passed away, right? Those are more likely. It does not seem like Cynthia and Adelia are the same person. We could turn out to be wrong about that in a number of ways, but that's my hot take. I don't think that's her. I happen to know from other research that Morton married Cynthia, and so this is where you can get tripped up on these ones that don't specify a relation. Cynthia is not a child of Honeywell and Emily. She is a child-in-law. She is a daughter-in-law who has moved in because they are living with her husband's parents. So she's not actually a blood relation of this family. Leonard is, because he's a brother of Emily. But Cynthia is a daughter-in-law. So she is married to Morton. However, this is the right family. This is the right guy. So we are going to save Honeywell Hammond. We're going to save H. Hammond here to Honeywell. And because this family group. Oh, and notice something. Oh, this is one of those annoying things about Ancestry. I can't attach this record to the alternate. I want to say that this source matches the other source that said he was born in New York, right? And it also says that he was born in 1810. I guess I could do it this way. So it is an oddity of Ancestry that if I add it as a new fact, and I actually want to add them both as an alternate fact, not preferred, otherwise it blows away it'll delete my 1807 Vermont. I don't want it to delete 1807 Vermont because all the other sources said 1807 Vermont. I want to keep that. This is an alternate. It happens to be the case. If I click alternate for both of them, it is going to make me one new birth date with 1810 New York. We'll see that as soon as I click save. And that's actually fine in this case because Idaho does it kind of. The Idaho death record didn't actually say anything about what year he was born. It just said he was born in the state of New York. It doesn't say how old. This is the death record for his son. It didn't say Honeywell was born in 1807. It didn't say anything one way or another. So now I have these two, and I am mildly irritated about that because it didn't actually say 1807. And I think the cleanest thing to do is I'm just going to change the source here. And I do not always spend this much time on these because it's just it's very fussy, and you don't always have to be that fussy. But what I'm going to do is switch which fact it is attached to. So now you will see that I have 1810 New York attached to the Idaho record and 1860 census. And then I'm just going to delete this one so that I don't have so many alternate facts piling up. I don't love that. And then I do need to I need to fix this so it says New York, USA. The reason I want to do that is so that later on, when I'm looking at collections of things by location, I want the locations to group together correctly. And it will do that if they're exactly the same, and it won't do that if they're not exact. Okay, so now I have this. I have two sources that say he was born in New York. One of them specifies in 1810 and the other one doesn't say. And that's a little cleaner. And then I have three sources that say he was born in Vermont around 1807. That's cleaner. And then the 1840 census doesn't say about his birth at all. So now I have some legit possibilities here. So I wanted to fill that gap in the 1860 census. Thumbs up. We did good there. I now have the question of where was Honeywell in 1830? Am I going to find him in the 1830 census? And I'm saying that quizzically because if I think about how old Honeywell was, he was age 23. He would have had to have been the head of a household in order to show up as an independent person on the census. If he was a hired hand or living with his parents, he's going to show up as a check mark and not listed by name. And at age 23, it really could go either way. We don't know. Right, in 1830, the census that I'm hypothesizing about, he was 23. Is he going to be, for him to be the head of household, he would have likely had to have been married already and set out, right, starting on his way or whatever. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. We don't know. So if I don't find him in 1830, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't surprise me. The thing that's going to be difficult, because it's difficult at this stage, is I don't have him named with his parents anywhere. So how am I going to connect him back to his parents? The way we connected Eugene to Honeywell was that we found the two of them together in a census, multiple censuses, and we found a family book. How do I find Honeywell in his parents' records? I don't know. Let's go look at census and see if we find any more census. So we're just going to filter this down to census. We know this guy. This is going to be our guy because that's Beaver County. But that doesn't help me. Here is a Robert H. Hammond in 1830. Could that be? There's the H we know and love, and it's in Pennsylvania, so that's interesting. Here's the same guy in 1820. That's interesting. And see how all we have are numbers. Is one of those numbers Honeywell? We don't know. We don't know. We don't know. How are we going to connect? We would be looking at this point for birth rate. Oh, I know. We'll go look in Vermont. Let's go look in Vermont. Look in Vermont. Vermont birth records. Okay, so I don't want census records. I want... Let's just go, we think he was born, let's pretend he was born in Vermont. Let's say we know he was born in Vermont. We think we know that. Let's go look at collections for Vermont. What does Ancestry have for Vermont? Let's go look. Vermont Census, Vermont birth, marriage, and death. Vermont birth records. 1909. That doesn't help us at all. Not at all. Vermont birth, marriage, and death. Vermont, 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 Vermont. Vermont vital records. Well, that's more like, okay. Vermont 1720 to 1908. If he's in there, that's the date range we want. So let's look at that. Can we find Honeywell Hammond? Let's fill him in. Can we find him in the Vermont vital records? Honeywell Hammond. Negative. But he had a son named Homer, and there's a guy named Homer who is not his son, but is a guy named Homer. Is that a family name? We don't know. We don't know. Nothing in here leaps out as, okay, yes, there were a few people named Hammond that are in this record collection. There's not a ton of information here. So, okay. So we're getting close to the end of the stream, and we have reached a good stopping point. And I'm going to maybe give a quick recap of what we covered on this stream, and I'll talk about kind of where we are in our research. Let's go back to the tree, and we'll talk about maybe what we'll do in a future session. So here we are, and let's see, I will hop over to the pedigree. The pedigree view of the tree is going to show us more clearly what we know about the direct ancestors of my grandfather, Harry Harvard Hammond, that we've been studying. So we spent most of our time today talking about so this is grandfather, great-grandfather, second great-grandfather, whose name was Honeywell Hammond. We didn't hardly add nothing to this tree, did we? Right? We didn't add a new date. We don't have his date of death. We had a few more census records for him. We did not find his parents. We have not expanded this tree at all. We even managed to find not one, not two, but 3 books. 2 books about the Hammonds, free on archive.org, and a 3rd book about allied families, blah, blah, blah names, and allied families, of which the Hammonds were an allied family. And so they got the little tiny chapter towards the back of the book about the history of the Hammonds. And we concluded from reading all those books that they are all talking about the same colonial family. It came from the same, probably, we didn't go back and look at the original immigrant, but it looked to us like they were pointing to that same set of immigrants. So something William, Benjamin stuff. And our problem is that although we found the incredibly tantalizing fact that one of the early marriages into that Hammond family was a woman whose surname was Honeywell, spelled just like we saw it spelled in the Shumway book where he was named, right? But he himself, our guy, we did not find a clear candidate that said, yes, that's definitely the guy in any of those Hammond books. It's just not clear. So there was that one dude in Ohio that was a maybe, but there just wasn't enough to connect the 2 of them together. But due to the fact that that Honeywell surname was clearly in that origin tree. We believe, and there were 2 or 3 other sons of various branches of that family who were named Honeywell, spelled that way. We believe that that became a family given name as a tribute to their original ancestor, Mrs. Elizabeth Honeywell Hammond. And that means that we really, really, really are leaning towards Honeywell being a child of that family. But the books didn't tell us how. The books were all written during a time when the details of Honeywell's life should have been known, but the authors of the books may not have been in contact with that branch of the family to get that information. So it ain't in there. None of those 3 had it. So we don't yet know how he's connected to that family, and we want to go try to find that out. We've also run into the dreaded census gulf, where the pivotal events in Honeywell's life where he would have been living with his family he is not named in the census, and therefore he may be in there as a tick mark, but we don't know. So he may be in there with his father's family, but we won't know that it's him because he's not named. And that'll be true for most of by the time he's named in a census, he's 43 years old and has his own family. And we don't see any evidence that his aging parents lived with him the way Eugene's parents lived with him, and that helped us there. So we have really hit a bit of a brick wall with this guy because we don't know exactly where he came from. And my clever trick with the census is not going to serve us here. It's not going to work. And so now we're going to have to think more creatively about how we will figure out. We don't even for sure know that he came from Vermont because a couple records said New York, but we're going to maybe venture a guess that it's that area. Both Vermont and New York are very difficult to research in the time period that Honeywell would have lived there. And we did our quick and dirty, super lazy search into the Vermont vital records as Ancestry has them, which are super incomplete. And we simply just didn't find anything. We didn't find anything on Honeywell, and we didn't really find a candidate that looked real good for Honeywell Hammond. We did see, however, there are some Hammonds living in Vermont, alert the media, but we don't have enough on them either to know whether any of them is connected to our Honeywell. So when we pick back up at some point, maybe next stream, maybe a future stream after that, the mystery that we will look at is we're going to revisit a story that I started to tell a couple streams ago about my aunt on the Hammond side who went to Iowa and actually visited the cemetery where Eugene and Ella's infants are buried, Cora and Charlie, who died when they were toddlers, or young, very young. They are buried in a cemetery in Butler County, Iowa, and there are only 4 Hammonds, 4, that we can find in that entire cemetery. There are actually only 4 Hammonds, I believe, in that entire county, in all the cemeteries in the entire county, because it's fairly rural. And 2 of them are baby Cora and baby Charlie, and the other 2 are not Honeywell nor Emily. They are 2 other people, and we're going to talk about those 2 other people and how they held the key to figuring out where Honeywell came from, because it is magical. It is the best thing that best present my aunt ever got me was a picture of the gravestone of that dude, and I'll show you why in a future stream. So thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited that we had a viewer who joined today. And if you are watching this in the video on demand, I believe that you can leave chat in the stream when I'm not actually live streaming. So I haven't figured out how to read it yet, but I'll go look. You are welcome to also contact me on social media. But I'm looking forward to finding out more about what you, the viewers, want to see on this stream. In the future, I think we're real interested in maybe expanding out and looking at viewer trees, answering your specific questions. What are you studying? What do you want help researching? What can I look up for you? Again, the reason I'm here and not just canning these and putting them on YouTube is so that we can make this more interactive and it can give me new puzzles to solve. I'm having fun telling you about puzzles I've already solved, but I think it would be really fun to go look at stuff that I don't already know the answers to and figure that stuff out together. So if you're enjoying this, Do please give us a follow. That'll allow you to be notified when we go live and you'll be able to join. Our current schedule is Wednesdays and Sundays. We're trying out some different times to just see if any of them get more viewers or if they work for you. Again, let me know because I'm pretty flexible on that stuff. And I hope to see you on a future stream. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you next time.